Our topic, as you see, spiritual culture and its values based on Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's start with a little background. Some of you may already know, at the University of Oxford in England, there's a department, Vaishnava Studies Department, largely made up of ISKCON devotee PhDs in philosophy and religion. And through decades worth of interaction with the Oxford University group, they've grown to respect the richness and depth of Vaishnavism, not only our version, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but Vaishnavism as the members of ISKCON understand it. And so they have a formal accredited division of the religion department at Oxford University called Department of Vaishnava Studies. And that group of devotees spent some time in conjunction with our ISKCON leadership to come up with a really, really, really simplified version of the message of Bhagavad Gita. And so one of the features of that was called the Gita values, and there's 6 of them. And those same values, of course, are taught in Srimad Bhagavatam, because the undergraduate and the graduate study don't change principles, they just expand and give more detail. So in honor of this Bhadra month, when at the end of on the full moon day of the Bhadra month, we'll be celebrating the Purnima, just like 9 days ago or so, 12 days ago, we honored the appearance day of Balaram on the previous month's full moon, Shravan months. So Bhadra Purnima, in honor of Bhadra Purnima, the same values, the Bhagavatam and its values will be the topic that we'll be discussing during this visit. And it's rooted in the Gita values of the Oxford University. It's called the something project. Called the something project. It's mentioned at the end of this document that we're handing out. What's it called?
Oxford Project.
Oxford Project, yeah, okay. So to make it relevant to our daily lives, I'm going to show a little diagram, a few of them actually, and one of them is this design of cultural engineering. Somehow the batteries are not working. Can you try to fix it so the slide changer is working? Just, you don't have to run away. Just, the batteries may be fine. Just check and see if you can get it to work. Maybe the connection, they're new batteries. So, in the corporate world, I'm not a corporate person, but some people are, and they have this, corporate cultural engineering or cultural designing. They want to change the culture of an organization or a group of people. There's sociologists that use the same metaphor, the metaphor of the iceberg of culture. There's other metaphors that also work, but I like this one. So there's the tip of the iceberg, and then there's the huge part of the iceberg that's below the surface of the water. So for cultural, considering the culture of any group of people, there's what's called in that field artifacts or things that are observable, behaviors, something that you can measure, something that's out there that's
It's connected.
oh, okay. Perceivable. So that's one part of culture. Then another part of culture that supports behaviors is values. So within a group, it could be their mission statement, their set of beliefs for some groups of people, what someone says is really important to them. I mean, it's something that I commonly do when I, especially with young people, when they're trying to find out who they are. You know, what's really important to you? So that's whatever is really important to you, that's a value. And then values support behaviors. Changing behaviors may have some effect on values, but values, there's interrelationship between the two. But most important is attending to values. There's some details, but skip it. And then the bottom of the iceberg is not based upon time, place, circumstance, but unchanging, deeply held convictions about life. And so let's say the deeply held conviction of Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharana. Our position is we're part and parcel of the Supreme, and as the part is meant for service to the Supreme, we're meant for service to the Supreme. Or as part is service to the whole, we're meant for service to the, like Prabhupada's example, the finger, and the finger that's disconnected from the body, it's yuck, lying on the floor. But you connect the finger to the body and then it's useful. It's not yuck anymore. It's fulfilling its purpose. The part is meant to serve the whole. So many ways of describing that. So it's a deeply held conviction might be, I am meant to, for the pleasure of Krishna. That's who I am. Now, that may not be so much in touch with that. In fact, material consciousness, we're not in touch with that. But unchallenged certainties, whatever those are, for a culture, that's at the bottom of the iceberg, and so we're going to be looking at values that can be demonstrated by behaviors, but the focus here goes to values, and by Gita values or Bhagavatam values, it's to help us get closer to and stay in constant touch with our deepest held convictions of life. Like, who am I? It's kind of, aside from what's important to you, who's the you that something is important to you? Who are you? Or what are you? And searching for the answer to that question is helped by values and behaviors. So, modern education, I'm going to, you're going to see this again tomorrow because it's important to understand. I feel it's important to understand why we're doing what we're doing. Modern education in the world, not only in America, but in the world, it's information-based. I've said this several times. Some years ago, 8, 9 years ago, in India there was a national conference of educators of different levels, elementary, high school, college, graduate school, PhD level. And the keynotes, the theme was education in India today can be summarized in 5 words: information, 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 no transformation. And real education is meant for building character, which is values or the basis of the behaviors of society. If you have good character, then you're going to behave nicely, whatever information you have, and vice versa. If you have a lot of information and you don't have good character, that person is dangerous, called modern society. Or they're using information in ways that are absent in character because character hasn't developed. So it's missing the mark of what real education is. So real education is not, there's information, but it's not just information. It's knowledge or wisdom, and you read in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, in the beginning part of chapter 13, Arjuna asks about 6 topics. There are 3 pairs of 2, but one of them is knowledge and the object of knowledge. Field of activities, the knower, the field, matter and spirit. The enjoyer and that which is enjoyed, material nature and the enjoyer of material nature. Matter and spirit. It's a Sankhya chapter. So knowledge, you can look later, or some of you already know. Chapter 13, text 8 through 12, that's the items of knowledge. And they're all qualities. Every one of them is qualities. So, because one who has knowledge has qualities. Or one who is wise. And wisdom literature in the world, I know this certainly about China because I visit China a substantial part of each year. There's traditional Chinese wisdom. They're very fond of it and proud of it and connected with it. And it has everything to do with values. And it's a lot of similarity. When people see the similarity, they go, wow, a lot of similarity. And it's because it becomes wisdom and wisdom and wisdom and wisdom is quite similar. And it's more than information. It's a way that you live your life. Wise people similarly live their lives in a similar fashion. Now, there's certainly differences, and one of those differences is the deeply held assumptions at the bottom of the iceberg. What's the purpose to which those values are applied? And what supports them? What makes them values? Instead of it's just subjective. Is there a real standard of values and behavior? That's a nice question. Like, where does everything come from? That's a nice question. Where do I come from? And who am I? That's a nice question. Those are nice questions. So those are the deeply held convictions that are unchanging over time and circumstance. So we're going to be focusing on this knowledge and wisdom. And when we read about knowledge and wisdom, there's a big space between, let's say, over on the left side is where we are, and over on the right side is where we want to go, and there's a big gap between where we are and where we want to go. If we hold values that are very high. So a modern term that's also a carpentry term and an architectural term is liminal. It's a Latin word that means in between this and that. For those people that are interested in changing culture for an individual or group of individuals, liminal space is a modern term. It's the gap between where we are and where we want to be. You know, all these self-help kind of writings, they use this term because this is where we want to be. This is where we are, and we have to cross this liminal space, and it's uncomfortable to be neither here nor there. It's right in Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna says, what if I tried for what you're saying and I don't make it? Then I'm neither here nor there. when we're hearing about Gita values, it's important to know when you're really trying for a value, to cultivate a value that's not yet fully enriched in your life, there's some uncomfortable moments or space that you have to cross over to get there. That's good. That discomfort is good. It's an indicator you're getting there. Keep going. Keep going with confidence in what the goal is and the means to get to the goal. And with Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, that's the main support is Krishna to get there, because otherwise we're not going to make it. Here's a little statement that's nice, Prabhupada writing. Bhagavad Gita is the instruction given by Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the book containing topics exclusively about Krishna and his devotees. These two books are the special nectar of the words of Krishna, what's Krishna Katha. So there's a connection between the values of Bhagavad Gita and the values of Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's a one-to-one correlation. Undergraduate, graduate study. So Bhagavatam gives histories, it's Purana, Bhagavad Purana. It gives a history of persons who live their lives according to that value. It illustrates or how they got from where they were to where they wanted to go with the assistance of an intervention and mercy of Krishna. So we're going to focus on these Bhagavatam values, remembering that's also Bhagavad Gita values, and we're going to be covering 6 of them, hopefully. We'll start with the first one that's in the list. It's not necessarily chronological, developmental, but there is some sensibility to starting with Darshana, or equal vision. Who knows the verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna speaks of Darshana, chapter 5? You know the verse. Anyone else know the verse? 2, 3 people know the verse? 4 people? 5? Do you know the verse? Could you say it? Go ahead. He's shy. You say it together with your father. A little help, you got it. It's good. Nice going. How old are you?
6 years old.
6 years old. Would you like to hear a nice story about Bhakti Siddhanta? Yeah. You know who is Bhakti Siddhanta, right? Bhakti Siddhanta, once upon a time, he was 6 years old. Like you. And when he was 6 years old, he was an amazing little boy. He knew the entire Bhagavad Gita, 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita from memory. And not only that, he could give an explanation of each verse for 10 minutes, every single verse. He was up there. So your father is very kind in teaching you some verses of Bhagavad Gita. So now let's try to understand the meaning. Sama means equal, and darsha, like you go to see the deity, it's called deity darshan, right? Darshan, you see the deity, go see the deity, deity darshan. And the timing of deity darshan is between this time, that time. So darsha means to see, and sama means equal. Equal vision. So what does that mean? there's variety in this world. Lots of differences of fruits, little creatures that crawl and fly, insects and birds and aquatics and whatever those guys are. It's animals. Okay. There's more animals, different types of animals. So many differences. Differences in species of life, and then even on human form differences of nations and culture and language, and it's easy to see differences. So different people respond in different way to different stimuli. There's differences in different kinds of people. And there's differences of life forms, differences of people, differences of situations, differences of exchanges between people. So with all those differences, how are we supposed to see equally? That can be a challenge. Here's a very nice text, straight from Srimad Bhagavatam, the preface of the Bhagavatam. We must know the present need of human society. And what is that need? Human society no longer is bounded by geographical limits to particular countries or communities. Human society is broader than in the Middle Ages, and the world tendency is toward one state or one human society. The ideals of spiritual communism, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, are based more or less on the oneness of the entire human society, nay, of the entire energy of living beings. The need is felt by great thinkers to make this a successful ideology. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need in human society. It begins, therefore, with an aphorism of Vedanta philosophy, Janmad Yasya Yataha, to establish the ideal of a common cause, or absolute truth, the source of everything, the cause of all causes. So that's the basis of the Sama Darshana. That there's Bhagavad Gita knowledge, will then go to the Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita's knowledge is behind the Sama Darshana value. That the Gita's idea of equal vision speaks of the equality of all living beings, where life is respected regardless of race, gender, caste, creed, or species. That's down in the bottom right, that's a key, and the upper left, that's a lock, shaped like a heart. And keys are needed to open locks. So there's a mystery with how you see Sama Darshana when there's so many differences. It's that which is within each living being that's the same, although the packaging is different. So what's that thing that's the same? What's that commonality? It's a nice illustration showing the evolutionary stages of life and all these little, you can't see it so well, that spark inside the chest of the man is the same spark inside the chest of the ape, inside the chest of the lion, and so forth and so on, all the other species of life, and so many sparks all around. That commonality is we're part of this same eternal, unchanging spiritual energy. We're all part of that same unchanging spiritual energy. And according to Bhagavad Gita, all living beings, nice illustration on the right from Bhagavad Gita, all living beings, from the higher planets and higher species to the human form of life and the lower species and everything in between, we're all spirit souls. And it's the same spirit soul in size in an elephant and in a little squirrel. That little spark inside the elephant, very powerful, because Obviously, an elephant's very powerful. Corresponding to his body, he can do powerful things. But that powerful energy is coming ultimately from the Supreme, and the tiny particle that's within the elephant is animating the body of the elephant and the squirrel. According to Bhagavad Gita, this is the knowledge that's behind the Darshana principle. Spirit soul is eternal, Sat, is by nature conscious or cognizant, Chit, and by nature blissful. So we all want to be happy because by nature we're happy. We just forgot who we are, and so we've struggled with other things. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having human experience. It's a nice photograph. So now we're going to have, part of this presentation has exercises, including skits. Awesome, huh? Then the purpose of all of that is to take the information aspect and bring it in, so it's not just information. It gets assimilated at least a little bit. So Vangsi Dari has volunteered with a little arm twisting to do the facilitation of the exercises.
So
You gotta stand up.
it's a quick exercise. So let's all close our eyes. Let's try to get into a deep meditative mode, and that will be followed by short kirtan. Close our eyes and take deep breaths. So when you are taking the breath in, observe the air, and when you're exhaling, observe the air again. Just take a deep breath in, deep breath out. Now slowly, let us take our consciousness to feel the feet, the bottom part of our feet. With your inner senses, feel your feet, and slowly move upwards and feel your legs, and feel your thighs. Moving up, feel your stomach. And now let's feel our back, the spinal cord, and then the chest and your arms. And slowly move up to feel our face and head. This is our body, but we are not the body. And now let's observe our thoughts. The thoughts coming in, thoughts going out. But we are not the thoughts. And let's observe our feeling. Might be feeling cold, little warm, etc. But we are not those feelings as well. Now let us concentrate again on the breath. Filling our heart in when you are inhaling and exhaling. Let us present with our heart at this moment. And now slowly try to sit inside your heart. you are a spirit soul connected to divine grace. You feel the happiness, joyfulness, and feelings of the heart being there. From this position, let us meditate for 2 minutes. A soft kirtan will start. So slowly just focus on the sound vibration and then just say the mantra, nothing else.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Slowly bring your attention to your chest again and rubbing your hands, slowly close your eyes, come to the external consciousness.
That's a little summary of our bhakti process. Darshana is rooted in the spiritual conception of self, both ourselves and others. Recognizing we have bodies, but there are certainly differences. So, this is audience participation. Many of you have read Srimad Bhagavatam in part or in whole. So from someone, one of the personalities within Srimad Bhagavatam, who's someone that exemplifies this equanimity or equal vision. Narada Muni. Ranti Dev. Nice example. Yeah. Rishabh Dev. Very nice. Krishna. Of course. So the Bhagavatam provides us in history format. What's it like? Here's the precept. Here's what it looks like in real life. So the Bhagavatam helps us connect the heart with the activities of life and different role models and heroes and persons who exhibit this for our benefit. One is Maharaj Bharat. He was a great king, very, very powerful. Somehow he became deviated from his higher principles of life by accepting this principle of protecting a deer to the point where he completely forgot his higher values of life. And when he died, thinking of the deer, he became a deer. Oh dear. And then lived his lifetime as a deer. In his next lifetime he became Jad Bharat, pictured over here on the lower right, carrying the palanquin of the king. During his instructions, Jad Bharat instructing the king, he said, all of us on the surface of the globe are living entities in different forms. Some of us are moving and some are not moving. All of us come into existence, remain for some time, and are annihilated when the body is again mingled with the earth. The temporary nature of the covering, the eternal nature of the soul. In Bhagavad Gita, there's this nice teaching that says, the living entity thus taking another gross body obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects, and different life forms have different ears or eyes, tongue, and senses grouped around the mind. And so the experience is different because the packaging is different, the set of senses is different, but the sameness is true for all these different species, or all that is in the human form. We just have, sophisticated ways of doing the same thing, but it's in principle quite the same. even in different bodies, every living entity is the same amazing spirit soul. The Sama Darshana principle doesn't mean you don't discriminate what differences are, or your own differences from the differences of another species or another person or whatever. We don't shut the intelligence, the discriminating factor off. But the higher discriminating factor is to recognize who we really are, or that more foundational element that's a value of what establishes your behaviors and respecting other forms of life. Although we're spirit soul is covered. This is now another Bhagavad Gita lesson you see in the lower right. It's chapter 3. The coverings are compared in different ways. Ignorance, passion, and then goodness. In ignorance, it's compared to the embryo covered by the womb. Like that picture of a tree. It's very, consciousness is there, but very dull. Very strong in the mode of ignorance, like the living entity, still within the womb, but the conscious spark is there. And then coming to the human form of life, there's some birds and snakes too, animal, covered by dust in lower life species, mirror covered by dust. You can't see yourself, although the potential is there when cleaned to see yourself in the mirror. And then the human form is compared to fire covered by smoke. Where there's smoke, there's fire. There's this expression. And so there's conscious, more evolved consciousness in the human form, but it's not at its perfect stage or most evolved stage. Samadarshana means from this human form of life we can see the consciousness that's covered in different ways. And based upon the coverings of different varieties of modes of nature, there's different behaviors and there's differences. Therefore, 5:18 Bhagavad Gita, the humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, this is vidya vinaya sampane, they see with equal vision a learned and gentle brahmana, that's that fellow over there on our left, a cow right next to him, an elephant behind the cow, a dog in the foreground, and funny looking guy who's this dog eater. Wouldn't want to meet that fellow. But the spark of life that's within is the same. So it's a Bhagavad Gita value that, and the Bhagavatam value teaches us how persons accomplish this. And that's what, it's a doorway to enter into the goal of Krishna consciousness or higher consciousness. In different audiences, I just call it the place of higher consciousness. That's a value that helps us get there. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, we find Lord Kapila Dev awarding this to his mother and to his father, because Kapila Dev is the personality of Godhead. To his mother, he speaks this. The fire in a big piece of wood appears very big, and in a stick, the fire appears small. Actually, the quality of fire is the same everywhere, but the manifestation of material nature is such that according to the fuel, the fire appears bigger and smaller. Similarly, the soul in the universal body, although the same quality, is different from the soul in the smaller body. Interesting. We don't normally think like that. I was thinking, this morning, I was thinking about the law of gravity. And planets in our universe are floating, according to science, according to mass, of different planets, they're floating in space. That's the notion. They stay in place because of that gravitational pull. There's a small problem. There's something like 80% of the mass of the universe can't be found to match that model. You might say there's something missing about the model, but instead they say, well, there's black holes and you just can't find the mass that's in the universe. And it's not to say there aren't black holes, but it's like that our model is, there's no force there's no universal soul holding things in place. But then there's another model of the Vedic model that's Anantashesha is holding up the planets. Oh, come on. That's silly. But here's Kapila Dev speaking to his father, Karma Muni. In your own heart, through your intellect, you will always see me, the supreme self-effulgent soul dwelling within the hearts of all living entities. Thus you will achieve the state of eternal life, free from all lamentation and fear. Now, for those of you that know the story, Kardama Muni was one of the direct sons of Lord Brahma. And Kardama Muni was requested to assist Lord Brahma in filling up the universe he just had created with good praja. So the answer was, yes, sir. But he didn't just go creating praja. He went to the forest to achieve spiritual perfection so he could create good praja. But he was not just a meditator and obedient follower of his father's order. He was a devotee, and so he was meditating on Lord Vishnu. And with such devotion, Lord Vishnu came. It's like really nice. Standing on the back of Garuda with Garuda's wings flapping very gently. Karma Muni paid his obeisances again and again and stood up and paid obeisances again and again. And Lord Vishnu said, you have pleased me very much by your devotion. I know, therefore I've come before you. And I know your heart. And you desire to have a son like me. So I will come as your son. But first you have to have a wife. But here's some good news. In 2-3 days, she's going to come with her dad. And he's going to make a marriage proposal. You just have to say yes. Really easy matchmaking. And she's as qualified as you are. And after some time, I will appear as your son. And a few other things, and he departed. So Kapila Dev is now speaking to his father, saying, I fulfilled your desire, I came as your son, and now you're going back to the forest, and you'll be with me always through your intellect. I mean, this is the spiritual kind, not the other kind. That's Bodhi Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga, Bodhi Yoga, same. You'll see me. You'll be with me always. I'll be with you always. And you'll go to the spiritual world in that consciousness of me. So he, Kapila Dev, granted that to both his mother and father, although he appeared as their son. Sometimes children are very advanced more than their parents. It happens sometimes. There's a nice description in the Bhagavatam of the Avanti Brahmana. I'll narrate the story, but just I'm curious. How many of you know the story? Okay, about a third. It's found in the 11th canto. There's a whole chapter. 11th canto, Uddhava and Krishna's discussion, the Uddhava Gita section of the Bhagavatam. And Uddhava asks, the chapter begins, in what way does the living entity suffer? What's the foundation and basis of a living entity's suffering? Because we're joyful. Pandita Samadarshana and Satchit Ananda, so where's the suffering come from? How does that enter into their experience of life? And to answer his question, Krishna says, fantastic question. Here's a little story. And it's a true story. Otherwise, Krishna is not just making up a Harry Potter story. It's a story of a Brahmana from Avantipur. And this Brahmana, quick story, narration, it's a whole chapter. He was qualified as a Brahmana and very wealthy. He was a householder, he had grown-up children, and he was really into his wealth to the extent that he wasn't even properly caring for his family with his wealth. He just liked to look at his wealth and get more. And he was not so charitable to the public, although he had brahmanas are supposed to be dhana patigraha. They receive charity and they give in charity, but he was receiving but not giving so much. So it was not appreciated, even by his own family, for those reasons. And as time passed, he became so absorbed in his wealth and accumulating more wealth, call it mode of passion, he slackened in his Brahminical activities and practices. Sometimes devotees make that mistake. And as a result, the Supreme Lord was very kind. He took away everything. This thing, that thing happened, and his wealth was all gone. And the little bit that was left, people came and stole it from him, and his family abandoned him, and he's left all alone with nothing but sorrow. And so he was a Brahmin, he didn't have a means of maintenance, so he went begging, and then people would, tell him, go away. You're just taking advantage of your being a Brahmana to get money from us, get out of here. And the little bit that he would receive, the children would come and pass urine in his begging bowl, and he was mistreated, as he had mistreated other people, not exactly in the same way. So he's in this conundrum space, wondering, how has all this happened, and why am I suffering? And he gives maybe this, maybe that, the other, and he rules out each one of them. And then the conclusion, his reflection, that the root cause of my suffering is the mind. Because my mind is polluted, I'm suffering. Well, he gave up that identification with the mind, not that his misfortune all of a sudden shifted, but he became happy within. And the externals of his life also started to change because of that. So it's Krishna's instruction to Uddhava about what the cause of suffering is, and forgetting who we are and forgetting the person who we're meant to be serving. That's the cause of all of our suffering. So equal vision begins with seeing ourselves as what we are and seeing other living beings as who they truly are. I mean, there's coverings, and that's not who they truly are, just like the exercise that you were taken through by Vamsidhari. This vision awards personhood to all, links everyone with the divine grace and consequently with each other. Now that's that liminal space image. That's where we want to go, and we're not there yet. But values will help us come to that position, behavior-wise. And so we slowly adjust behaviors to match that value and strengthen the value on the strength of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. And we can go beyond fear and enter into the fearlessness or insecurity to feel secure with whatever our situation is. So now we're ready for some wrap-up exercises.
So now we really want to get to practicality, real life. So think of a situation which maybe a person, it can be a situation or someone causing it, who challenges or challenge you in a way that you cannot see them with equal vision. So basically what it means is you're pretty inspired, really want to be more of service, equal vision, all those good qualities. But something happened and that situation really it cannot challenges you to be in the mode of service. Okay? Take it to the deepest one, bigger ones. Once more, okay. So this is about trying to get back to our real life, where we face challenges. Particularly you're really going happy life, but something happens or someone does something, and then that puts us into as per the previous slide, in the insecure position or fearful position or upset, anger, etc. Okay, so think of that, and you all have the paper and pen. Try to write it down. Try to write it down with the questions in the mind. What happened? What was the exact thing happened? And when was it happened? And who triggered it? Who caused the trigger?
Bottom is what you felt.
And then finally, after that, what did you feel? So those are the two things. Write down the incident and your feeling. So quick question, what happened, when it was happened, and what did you feel? And if you need help with finding the feeling, here is a chart on the screen. So basically, if you're feeling happy, joyful, there's a set of feelings that is associated, grouped together. If you're feeling angry, hateful, hostile, agitated, resentful, jealous, these are the set of the feelings. slowly move on. Now, like the exercise we did earlier, with your inner vision, consciously see that other person as a spirit soul. Whoever caused or triggered the challenging situation, see that person as a spirit soul. Okay? So we do that more by closing your eyes again and getting back to the deep meditative mode, focusing on the breath. Take the breath in and out, and then visualize the other person is also a spirit soul, just like me. The other person, he or she, also has limitations. He or she also wants to help us and be nice with us and has good intentions. And is also eternally part and parcel of Krishna. From that space, we'll have a short meditative kirtan. keep in touch with your feelings. Take note of the feeling you're having. Please note that the feeling, this is, often we are used to say, we're doing good, we're feeling good, bad, like that, but that's a thought. It's a feeling. Feeling means you feel hot, cold, happy, angry, etc. So please take note of the feeling and slowly come to external consciousness and write it down on your exercise papers. So, any of you, let me ask you a quick question. Was there a change in your feelings?
Yes.
Yes or no? Anyone would like to say quickly in short? Like what kind of feelings you are having and what kind of feelings you are having after the meditation and the exercise? Just in short, just the feelings. Yeah.
Angry and irritated, and
Ah.
peaceful and forgiving.
Wow. So excellent. Yes, Madhu.
Ignored and
Mhm.
insecure, it changed to being touched.
Wow. Very good. That's very nice. Yes, Madhu.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think for me, it started out as being angry and irritated, and it was quite the opposite. Even after the exercise, it was even more angry. That is what it was. Probably because of the person I'm thinking.
Better to not think about the person.
Yes, Madhu.
Angry and frustrated, but later felt sad.
Hmm. You're more in.
Light, I was feeling sad and also feeling light. Very light.
So it started with some feeling, then you came more in touch with the feeling and then started diffusing after that. Okay. So what part of this exercise helped the shift?
To,
Yeah.
to understand they also have limitations.
They also have
They are
limitations.
also trying their best.
They're also trying their best. Yes, Mati.
They're part and parcel of the spirits.
They're also part and parcel and spirit soul.
That ignorance is there, and that's part of their, they are turned away from Krishna, so
Mm.
it's not entirely their fault.
Entirely their fault.
Their intentions are good.
Their intentions are good. So excellent. So now we'll try to make it more practical.
Oh, it's fun. It's like class is over, now it's party time.
So it will be needing two people in a group. So please find your neighbor and sit facing each other.
If there's three, it's okay.
Three is also fine. Okay. So let us again go back to our meditative mode. Close our eyes. And take a deep breath. in and out. And then now slowly look at the other person in the heart area, shoulder area, around that area. When you're seeing the other person, try to see their soul by following meditation. Okay? You see them that the other person also have hopes, have dreams and desires, just like I do. And they also have been disappointed by life. They have sometimes been hurt by other people. Sometimes even felt rejected and confused, just like we are. This devotee desires to be happy, to be fulfilled, to be content and joyful, just like I do. This devotee has a deep need for love, acceptance, and to be appreciated and to be cared for, and to care for others as well, just like I do. They have been hurt, just like I have been hurt sometimes. They have made mistakes before, been confused before, just like I have in the past. They desire to be happy, to be fulfilled, just like I do. So now take a moment to reflect upon all the likelinesses between you two. Contemplate that all the likeness are resting upon the soul within. Okay? So you can slowly come to external consciousness. And take a moment how to put into your daily life. This exercise and write it down on your exercise papers. And then, share it with each other, how you are planning to put it into your daily life. So consider to take this exercise sincerely, and better is try to lock it up with some of your daily activities, maybe like before eating, or something you do every day, and keep it simple also, just quick short exercise.
Are you going to give them a chance to share with their partner?
After that,
Okay.
I'm going to discuss with each other how we are planning to apply. Darshana. So here Amritpuri Mataji was asking a question. So are you going to say this to other person every day? Like when you're trying to do this exercise, are you going to do with the sit with the other person, do the same meditation? So try to see what is practical, but keep it short and simple. And just and
Let
continue.
them speak. Just let them converse, share.
So I wrote the situation
You have a skit planned?
That's for the next session.
Not now.
think about the situation, put myself in that situation. Say what are the needs, what are not being met. Try to help
Hare Krishna. Would any of you like to share your inspirations about this exercise? Any of you would like to share your experience, inspirations about this exercise? Any eye-opening, etc., etc.?
The two devotees I was sitting with, I was trying to observe Prabhu as you're sharing, and I felt my consciousness and the vision is going much deeper. I had some kind of judgment or apprehensions or opinion about these two devotees, but I felt the vision is actually going much deeper into, I mean, I don't know, not necessarily in terms of the spirit soul itself, the vision, but at least how they also are like me going through this process and have been hurt by somebody, whatever the behavior.
Going back from what she was saying, that I felt a more closer connection, and that we're not alone, and we have like, we're not the only one that's going through this stress, that everyone else is going through the same.
Anyone else? Final sharing? Okay, Sanjay.
So I was thinking about the last Kedarnath retreat, about the needs, trying to think about other person's needs which are not being met. and trying to put myself in their shoes to try to be more empathetic in helping them, whatever their relations are.
I'd like to make some concluding remarks. Mode of goodness is part of some Darshana, but it falls short because there's no basis and support for it. Mode of goodness is a kind of happiness that wisdom indicates, it points in the direction of, or it's coming from the place of wisdom, that mode of goodness. And mode of goodness is not good enough. Mode of goodness is good. And mode of goodness is supported by a spiritual conception, or say it conversely, as spiritual, the bottom of the iceberg. When the spiritual conception becomes nourished, then values and behaviors, when the bottom of the iceberg moves, the whole iceberg moves. So, Gita values and Bhagavatam values are teaching us how to mold our lives in such a way that we can connect with who we really are. And then who we really are is, there's a holistic picture of who we are. There's who we really are, and then there's the temporary circumstance of the holistic picture of who we are, the body and the mind, and the various feelings, etc., perceptions and conceptions, etc., that we carry. That's of the world. So a very relatable section of the exercise was, the other person is like me. But that's, the affective part, it is not the ontological part, or the real identity of who we are. So to go forward towards Bhagavatam values, it includes all those things, an alignment of so many things. And it's, it's hard to get an alignment straight because we're out of alignment. And the tendency is to go back out of alignment because we're out of alignment. We're conditioned souls. Just this last comment about the Gitanagari retreat, there's a lot of symmetry behind what was being encouraged, having Bir Krishna Maharaj come twice and give the part 1, part 2 seminar on essentially the same thing, was very purposeful, because it takes a while for a change of culture. But for spiritual culture, for Krishna conscious spiritual culture, we need to hear again and again. And so there's symmetry behind and amongst these different resources that are being presented. There's another example of that is there's an attempt, I'm not sure exactly how far along the road it's gotten, but Ikshvaku Prabhu, some of you may remember Ikshvaku Prabhu, originally from Peru, and then did his education and marriage thing in Australia. Now he's based in Mayapur, and he has traveled around the world since. He came to us on a seminar on counseling, basic skills of helping people that are struggling, or helping ourselves when we're struggling, of getting on the other side of the struggle. I'm just mentioning this in passing because there's lots of similarity between this and that and the other thing. It's all to help us get to where we want to go. The values are far, and we have some internalization of what it feels like to have that value, and to then the exercise of practical living by that value. Even something that's very simple, and you strive on a regular basis, daily basis, whatever, towards that simple thing, it helps you reach the goal. Bhaktivinoda Thakur teaches progress, I like this, progress is a series of small steps in the right direction. And we should try to make progress. And I should be very clear what the right direction is. It's not just something external, a behavior. It's not just a value. Values are essential to help us address behaviors. It's this foundational principle of self-realization, knowing who we really are, honest with a spiritual conception. That's one appreciation that I have of the uniqueness of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, different from, because I'm exposed to it a lot, traditional Chinese wisdom. Wisdom is wisdom, and it's right. But how do you get there and stay there, and what's the purpose for which it's applied? And we need to be clear what the goal is, and then take a little step, because that's the goal, to know who we are, and to be able then to have real loving relationships where it's not dysfunctional. We know who the other person is, and it's not just one person. It's living entity. The realization as it expands to other living entities besides the ones that are like me, my group. You have to start somewhere, but the goal is this vision that Prabhupada was writing about here in Srimad Bhagavatam. That's my reflection. We shouldn't make a goal for ourselves, that's too high, and feel, oh, I'll never reach it, so why even try for it? We should have goals that are realistic, but we should also know where that little realistic goal is meant to take us. That's part of this transitioning between where we are and where we want to be. And it's a little step, isn't everything, but it's a step in the right direction. It's progress. Those are just some thoughts on the topic. Now, one other is, there's a document that we have, and we'll be passing out a hard copy, and I guess you'll be getting a digital copy also. You already got one. So somewhere, however you get your messages. Take a look at it, along with the practical exercise that was requested of you on this equal vision item. It's progressive. One leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing, but it's part of a package. It's not the goal in itself. It helps us to get to the goal. And making this kind of present, this is the fourth time I've had this exchange. It was really interesting, sitting when the whole thing is being taught in Chinese. The exercises, like feel your feet, and people wiggle their feet. I don't know Chinese. And then we had another group. That was new people, and then it was like experienced devotee group. And the feedback from both groups was, this was really helpful. So to help me make it helpful for you, take advantage of these things, and we're busy. I'm going to end. It's because we're busy. Have to go to the next thing and the next thing. But take some time and read over what these values are, and so that when you come, it goes in a little more deeply, and then we have our exercises that's also meant to make it go in more deeply. And then it's going to be like skits, role play skits, kind of like fun. People really like the role play skits. It's practical. And I think the classes will be shorter than this evening, because I spent some time doing introductory things. Thank you very much. Prabhupada Ki Jai. Yeah, but it's all milk sweets. Milk sweets. It's tiny.
Sometimes they add white sugar with like corn.